First contact and devastation. The exploration vessel Horizon drifted silently through the void, its massive solar arrays gleaming in the light of an unfamiliar star. On the bridge, Captain Elara Reed studied the holographic display of the newly discovered planetary system. 6 planets, 3 in the habitable zone. Significant artificial structures detected on the second planet, reported Science Officer Kai Chen, excitement evident in his voice, despite his professional demeanor. Reed nodded, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. After 15 years exploring the far reaches of space, the Horizon had finally found what humanity had been searching for: definitive proof of intelligent extraterrestrial life. "Launch the communication buoys," she ordered. "Standard first contact protocols. Let's introduce ourselves properly." The crew worked with practiced efficiency, positioning the communication satellites in orbit around the alien world. For 3 days, they transmitted Earth's welcome message on all frequencies: mathematical sequences, simple pictograms, and eventually, basic language constructs designed by the finest xenolinguists on Earth. On the 4th day, they received a response. The alien transmission contained what appeared to be navigational coordinates, accompanied by visual representations of their species. The Exorvec, as they called themselves, were hexapodal beings with iridescent exoskeletons and compound eyes that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "They're inviting us to a designated meeting point in their outer system," Chen said, analyzing the data. "Their technology appears to be approximately 100 years ahead of ours, based on their propulsion signatures." Reed considered this information carefully. "Prepare the diplomatic shuttle. I'll lead the contact team myself." Her executive officer, Commander Jackson, raised an objection. "Captain, protocols suggest you should remain on the Horizon." Reed shook her head firmly. "This is potentially the most significant moment in human history, David. I won't experience it through proxy." The meeting point was a massive space station orbiting the system's outermost gas giant. As the human shuttle approached, Reed felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. The station's architecture was organic yet precise, curves and angles flowing together in a structure that seemed both impossibly delicate and formidably sturdy. "They're scanning us," reported Lieutenant Rossi from the sensor station. "Multiple frequencies, very thorough." Reed straightened her uniform. "Let them look. We have nothing to hide." The docking procedure went smoothly, guided by automated systems. When the airlock opened, Reed led her team of 5 into the alien structure. The atmosphere was breathable, though heavy with unfamiliar scents. 3 Xorvec awaited them in a circular chamber. They stood nearly 2 meters tall, their chidnous bodies reflecting the ambient light in ripples of blue and purple. The central figure stepped forward, gesturing with its upper limbs in what Reed hoped was a greeting. "We come in peace," Reed said, activating the universal translator that would convert her words into the mathematical language they had established in their communications. The alien leader's compound eyes focused on Reed. When it spoke, its voice was a series of clicks and whistles that the translator rendered in flat, emotionless English. "The Exorvec Dominion acknowledges humanity. Your expansion has been noted." Reed maintained her diplomatic smile. "We're explorers, seeking knowledge and peaceful exchange between civilizations." The alien's head tilted slightly. "Your species reproduces and consumes at an unsustainable rate. Your technology advances rapidly. These are concerning traits. We've learned to balance growth with conservation," Reed explained, feeling the first flicker of unease. "Our history has taught us the importance of sustainable development." The alien leader made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. "History teaches that preventative measures are most effective. Threats must be eliminated before they mature." Before Reed could respond, a blinding light filled the chamber. She felt Commander Jackson push her aside as energy weapons discharge. 3 of her team dropped instantly. "Back to the shuttle," Reed shouted, drawing her sidearm and returning fire. They fought their way back to the airlock, losing Lieutenant Rossi in the process. Only Reed and Chen made it back to the shuttle. both wounded but alive. Emergency departure protocols. Reed commanded, her hands flying across the controls. Alert the horizon. We're under attack. The shuttle broke free from the docking clamps, accelerating away from the station as weapons fire tracked them. The horizon was already moving to intercept, its defensive systems coming online. "Captain," Chen said, his voice strained as he pressed a hand to his bleeding side. "I'm detecting multiple vessels launching from the station. Energy signatures consistent with weapons charging." Reed's blood ran cold. "Send an emergency transmission to Earth. First contact has failed. We're in a hostile engagement with a technologically superior species." The horizon never made it back to Earth. The HFY ships, faster and more heavily armed, overtook them at the edge of the system. The exploration vessel, designed for scientific missions rather than combat, stood no chance. Reed ordered the crew to the escape pods, programming the horizon to transmit all their data back to Earth before its destruction. Her last act as captain was to record a final message. "They see us as a future threat. They won't stop with the horizon. Earth must prepare." The HFY attack on human space came 3 weeks later. Without warning, their ships appeared near Earth's major colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan. The colonial defenses, designed primarily to protect against cosmic radiation and micrometeorites, provided no resistance against the focused energy weapons of the alien fleet. Titan colony, population 8 million, was reduced to molten slag in 6 hours. The Mars settlements lasted longer. Their defensive systems adapted from military technology, but by the end of the day, 14 million colonists were dead. Only the Europa research station managed to evacuate a significant portion of its personnel before its destruction. Earth watched in horror as the feeds from the colonies went dark one by one. The planetary defense system, never tested in actual combat, scrambled to prepare for what seemed like inevitable attack. But the HFY didn't immediately assault Earth. Instead, a transmission arrived, broadcast simultaneously to every communication device on the planet. "Humanity has been identified as a developing threat to galactic stability," the emotionless translated voice declared. "The elimination of your off-world presence is a measured response. Confine yourselves to your homeworld, and you may be permitted to continue existing under supervision. Any attempt to rebuild your space presence will result in your planet's sterilization." In the United Nations emergency session that followed, chaos reigned. Some nations advocated immediate surrender, while others called for deploying every nuclear weapon in Earth's arsenal against the alien ships now positioned in high orbit. Dr. Samira Hassan, the lone survivor from the Europa station, addressed the assembly with quiet intensity. "I watched them obliterate a research outpost housing primarily civilians. They're not interested in coexistence. They're eliminating what they perceive as competition before we become too advanced to contain." The Secretary General's face was ashen. "What can we possibly do against technology a century beyond ours?" From the back of the chamber, a voice responded. Kai Chen, the science officer who had survived the initial contact with Elara Reed. His left arm was in a sling, and his face bore the scars of his escape. "I've analyzed the data from our encounter and the colonial attacks," he said. "The HFY possess advanced technology, but it follows predictable patterns. Their weapons and shields operate on fixed energy frequencies. They don't adapt. They haven't needed to. They've been the dominant species for so long that innovation has stagnated." The assembly fell silent, absorbing this information. "Captain Reed discovered something else in that first encounter," Chen continued. "Their exoskeletons contain complex crystalline structures that resonate at specific frequencies. It appears to be central to their biology and technology." General Diana Ortega, commander of Earth's Unified Defense Forces, leaned forward. "Are you suggesting there's a weakness we can exploit?" Chen nodded grimly. "I believe we can develop countermeasures. Adaptive shields that can neutralize their weapons and resonance-based weapons that can penetrate their defenses. But we'll need time, resources, and absolute secrecy." The Emergency Defense Council was formed that day. Outwardly, Earth would appear to accept the HFY ultimatum. Space programs would be publicly dismantled, military satellites decommissioned. Meanwhile, humanity would secretly prepare for a war unlike any it had ever fought. 3 months later, deep within a repurposed mining facility beneath the lunar surface, General Ortega stood before the gathered military and scientific leadership. "We need someone to lead this operation," she said. "Someone who understands the enemy and has the strategic vision to overcome our technological disadvantage." All eyes turned to the woman who had just entered the chamber. Captain Elara Reed, believed dead by the public, stood before them. Her right arm had been replaced with a prosthetic, and a jagged scar ran from her temple to her jaw, but her eyes burned with the same determination that had made her one of Earth's finest exploration commanders. "I watched my crew die," she said simply. "I watched our colonies burn. Now I'll watch the HFY learn what happens when you corner humanity." Operation Starfall had begun. Operation Starfall and Retribution. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter became humanity's secret shipyard. Mining facilities, officially decommissioned following the HFY ultimatum, were converted into massive construction complexes. Inside hollowed-out asteroids, far from the alien observation posts, Earth built its response. Captain Elara Reed, now admiral by emergency promotion, stood in the observation deck of the construction facility codenamed Vulcan's Forge. Below her, workers swarmed over the skeletal frame of what would become the flagship of humanity's Retribution fleet. "The Nemesis will be ready for weapons installation next month," reported Chief Engineer Hiroshi Tanaka. "We're ahead of schedule." Reed nodded, her prosthetic hand flexing unconsciously. "And the adaptive shielding. Dr. Hassan's team has achieved a 97% effectiveness rating in simulations. The quantum fluctuation system can match and counter any energy frequency the HFY throw at us." Reed turned to face the assembled project leaders. "What about the resonance weapons?" Dr. Chen, now heading the Weapons Development Division, stepped forward. His injuries had healed, but he carried himself with the watchful tension of someone who had stared death in the face. "The prototypes are exceeding expectations," he said. "The crystalline structure of their exoskeletons and technology is remarkably uniform. Once calibrated, our weapons should bypass their shields completely and disrupt both their ships and their biology." Reed studied the tactical display, showing the current positions of the HFY monitoring vessels. "They're growing complacent. Their patrol patterns have become predictable, and they've reduced their presence near Earth's orbit. They believe we've accepted our cage." General Ortega, joining them via secure holographic link from the Lunar Command Center, smiled grimly. "The best trap is the one your enemy walks into believing they're the hunter." In the 18 months since the initial attack, Earth had transformed. Industries had been secretly retooled for war production. The brightest minds had developed technologies that combined human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien principles. Most importantly, humanity had united with singular purpose: survive and strike back. What the HFY failed to understand was fundamental to human nature. Throughout their history, humans had faced existential threats, from natural disasters to self-inflicted catastrophes, and each time they had adapted and emerged stronger. The alien ultimatum had not broken humanity's spirit, it had crystallized it. "Launch date is set for Operation Starfall," Reed announced. 6 months from today, we demonstrate to the HFY why it's dangerous to cage an animal instead of killing it outright." The Retribution fleet grew in secret, 40 warships designed specifically to counter HFY technology. Where the alien vessels relied on overwhelming power, human ships emphasized adaptability. Where HFY tactics were methodical and predictable, human battle plans embraced chaos and misdirection. On the day of launch, Admiral Reed addressed the 22,000 crew members who would carry humanity's response to the stars. "Every person serving on this fleet has lost someone to the HFY," she said, her voice carrying across the secure communication channels. Every one of us carries the weight of those 26 million souls. But today, we fight not just for vengeance, but for humanity's right to determine its own future. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity will not be relegated to a footnote in cosmic history. The fleet departed from their hidden bases using a revolutionary propulsion system that masked their energy signatures. They slipped past the sparse Exorvec patrols and assembled at the predetermined coordinates beyond Neptune's orbit. Reed stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, watching as the tactical display confirmed all ships in position. "Begin Phase 1, she ordered. "Target their primary monitoring station at the L2 Lagrange point." 3 stealth destroyers approached the alien outpost, their systems running silent. The Exorvec had no warning before the resonance weapons activated, sending precisely calibrated energy pulses that shattered their crystalline technology. The station imploded, its destruction barely visible as a brief flare against the blackness of space. "Phase 2, Reed continued. "Target their patrol vessels simultaneously." Across the solar system, human ships appeared seemingly out of nowhere, striking the scattered Xorvec ships before they could report contact. The alien vessels, accustomed to overwhelming adversaries with superior firepower, found their weapons ineffective against the adaptive shields. Meanwhile, the resonance weapons tore through their hulls with devastating efficiency. "All targets neutralized," reported Commander Lai, tactical officer of the Nemesis. "No transmissions detected. We have achieved complete surprise." Reed's expression remained impassive, but a cold satisfaction filled her. "Set course for the Exorvec home system. Maximum speed." The human fleet entered faster than light travel, utilizing a hybrid drive system, partly based on salvaged Xorvec technology. 3 days later, they arrived at the outer boundary of the alien system. "Multiple defensive installations detected," Lai announced. "Their fleet is mobilizing, but they appear disorganized. I don't think they expected anyone to strike at their homeworld." Reed studied the tactical display. "Deploy the fleet according to Battle Plan Hydra. Target their orbital defenses first, then their shipyards." The human fleet split into 5 battle groups, approaching from different vectors. The Exorvec responded with massive energy barrages that would have annihilated any conventional force. Against the adaptive shields, they were largely ineffective. The resonance weapons proved even more devastating than anticipated. Exorvec ships shattered, their crystalline components disintegrating under the targeted frequencies. Orbital platforms collapsed, and defensive installations went dark as their systems failed catastrophically. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Admiral Reed watched with cold detachment as humanity's technological innovations overcame the Xorvec's century-long advantage. "Their main fleet is retreating to defensive positions around the homeworld," Lai reported. "We've destroyed approximately 60% of their orbital capacity." Reed nodded. "Open a communication channel to their planetary government. Let's see if they're ready to reconsider their position on coexistence." The main view screen activated, showing a chamber filled with Xorvec officials. Their exoskeletons had darkened in what xenobiologists identified as a stress response. The one in the center position spoke, its translated voice no longer emotionless, but filled with what could only be described as shock. "How is this possible? You were contained. Your technology was primitive." Reed stepped forward, allowing the aliens to see her face clearly, scared but unbowed. "You made 3 critical mistakes. First, you judged us by your standards, assuming we would accept limitations imposed by force. Second, you left survivors who could study your weaknesses. But your greatest error was giving humanity a reason to unite against a common enemy." The alien leader's compound eyes focused on Reed. "What are your terms?" "Unconditional withdrawal from human space, reparations for our destroyed colonies, and recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with all the rights and protections that entails. Refuse, and we continue until your homeworld shares the fate of our colonies." The Xorvec Council conferred briefly before the leader responded. "The Dominion has never negotiated from a position of weakness before. "Consider it a learning opportunity," Reed replied coldly. "You have one planetary rotation to formalize your surrender." 24 hours later, representatives of the Exorvec Dominion boarded the Nemesis to sign the Treaty of Seoul, formally ending hostilities and acknowledging humanity's right to expand throughout the stars. The document included provisions for technological exchange and established boundaries between human and Horvec space. As the alien delegation departed, Dr. Chen joined Admiral Reed on the observation deck. Together, they watched the blue-green planet that had nearly orchestrated humanity's confinement. "Was it enough?" Chen asked quietly. 26 million dead, and all we get is an apology and some technology." Reed was silent for a long moment. It wasn't about vengeance, It was about ensuring humanity's place in the galaxy. "The Exorvec will spread the word. Humans might look primitive, but they're the most dangerous species you could possibly corner." When the Retribution fleet returned to Earth, they found a civilization transformed. The secret war effort had accelerated technological development across all sectors. The unity forged in crisis had created new international cooperation. Humanity emerged from its trial, not just as survivors, but as a recognized interstellar power. Admiral Reed declined the offers of political positions and military promotions. Instead, she requested command of a new exploration vessel, larger, better armed, but still dedicated to the mission of discovery. "The Exorvec won't be the only advanced species we encounter," she explained to the United Earth Council. "Some may be friends, others enemies, but they'll all need to understand one fundamental truth about humanity." She gazed out at the stars, newly accessible now that the alien restrictions had been lifted. "We come in peace, prepared for war, and woe to anyone who mistakes our preference for the former as an inability to deliver the latter." The exploration vessel Phoenix departed Earth the following spring, carrying humanity's message to the stars. The galaxy would soon learn that humans made far better allies than enemies, a lesson the Exorvec had learned at tremendous cost.